So you and your creative partner have decided you're going to get together, you're going to make a comic. You've got a few emails going back and forth, so you're ready to get started, right? You don't really need a contract, do you? Hi, my name is Gamal Hennessy, and I'm an attorney, author, and business consultant who specializes in the comic book industry. Now, a lot of times people think of contracts and they think of, well, I need a contract in case I have to sue somebody or in case I have to go to court or something like that. And in some cases, that is true, but in the comic book industry, that is actually very rare. In fact, there are four major reasons why you need a contract that have nothing to do with going to court. And I will explain what those four things are now, but keep in mind, this is not legal advice, and I am not your attorney because this is not the way attorney-client relationships are formed. So, the first thing that a contract will actually help you with when you're making a contract, when you're making a comic, I should say, is clarity. It's going to be very clear when you have a well-written contract about what the project is and what the roles are for everybody involved. So, for example, you and your creative partner are going to make a comic. Well, what does it mean when you say a comic? Are you talking about a webtoon? Are you talking about a one shot? Are you talking about an ongoing series? Are you talking about a graphic novel? What exactly are you trying to make? And what is the long term goal? A good contract will actually point out if this is going to be a TV show or a movie or something else later on, how that's going to get handled, how it's going to get handled in terms of the rights, the revenue, and the responsibility of everybody involved. When you're thinking about responsibility, you may get together with your creative partner because you're going to write the comic and somebody else is going to draw the comic. But a good contract will actually lay out, well, who's going to do the marketing? Who's going to do the printing? If there's upfront money that has to go into the comic to get the comic off the ground, who's going to pay for that? How are they going to get their money back? What happens if everything goes sideways? If you don't have a contract, then most of those really critical questions are not going to get answered in the emails that you guys have going back and forth before you get started. The second major reason why you want to have a contract is because you don't just want clarity when you are discussing the project with your creative partner. You want something that's going to explain what is going on with this project if you or your partner or both of you aren't around. So if you make a comic or you're in the process of making a comic and then one of you dies, well, what happens to that comic and the legal intellectual property that's in that comic? Does it go to your partner? Does it go to the estate of the person who died? Does it just disappear? If there's no contract, then everyone is forced to kind of either guess or sift through a lot of emails that may not explain everything because, again, you didn't have clarity in the emails about everything that was going on. So it's very difficult for someone to come in later on and try to understand what was happening when you were making this comic. The third thing that is very important in terms of having a contract for your comic is you want to be able to prove that you own this comic. Now, it may be self-evident to you when you're putting out the comic or when you're making the website or everything else, but if one of your long-term plans, for example, is to get this comic made into a movie or a video game or something else, and you need to bring in other partners like film studios or producers or anybody else, they're not going to put time and money into your project unless and until you can actually prove that you own it. Now, there are several ways that you can go about proving it. You can have the copyright registrations, you can have the trademark registrations, but the fundamental way you're going to prove that you own this comic and you didn't just work on it for someone else is by being able to show the contract to the movie studio before you get started. If you don't have a contract, it's going to be very challenging for anyone to put a significant amount of money into a project because the last thing that they want is to go through pre-production, to actually go into production, greenlight the film, start making the film, and all of a sudden get hit with a cease and desist letter, and all of that money goes down the drain. They would much rather see the contract up front and know what they're getting into. Now, the last thing that a contract is very useful for is a bit more psychological and Machiavellian, but still very important in the production of making comics. The process of working with someone to get a contract that you're both willing to sign will actually show you a lot about the way that person acts professionally relative to you and your partner. There is a quote, I do not remember who said it, but the quote basically goes, the way you do something is pretty much the way you do everything. So if a person takes weeks to get back to you about you negotiating the contract, or they're very demanding about the terms, or they decide one thing one day in terms of the contract language and then turn around and decide something else, another day, there's a good chance that that is actually how they're going to operate when this comic book is being made, when this comic book is being sold, when you're trying to negotiate other rights. A person who is difficult for whatever reason in the contract stage may prove to be just as difficult in the actual production of the book. And that is something that you probably want to know before you get into the long process of putting a book together and trying to get it out into the world. Now, yes, I said at the beginning of this, contracts are not only for going to court, but if you do have to actually go to court and try to prove what was supposed to be happening with this book or with the money coming out of the book or who owned the book or anything else, it is going to be much quicker and easier, relatively speaking, to actually establish all of those facts with a contract than it is to go through the process of sifting through everybody's email and then having depositions and everything else to try to prove what went on. Much easier to get all of that squared away in the contract before anybody creates anything. So, if you have questions about contracts or the way contracts are actually used in comics, there are a lot of videos that I've actually already done, and I will try to link a few of them in the comments. If you want to have a free consultation because you have questions about a specific contract issue that you're working on right now, there's also going to be a link in the comments. You will be able to contact me, set up that free consultation. Now, if you'd like to join a community of people who are trying to establish sustainable comic book careers, please consider joining Comics Experience, and there will also be a link for that in the comments as well. So until next time, thank you for listening. Now, please get off the internet and go make some comics.